I don't really get post anymore because I've got a virtual office. I get it all digitally, and I almost get none of it anymore. I don't really want snail mail. In fact, I've had to say rather rudely to a couple of people who've sent me messages saying, "What's your address?" If you're thinking of sending me a Christmas card, don't. And yesterday, the virtual office scanned me a Christmas card that somebody had sent, which is quite funny.
Welcome to Own It, Your Business and Your Life, with Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. In this podcast, we're going to cover everything you need to embrace to become a successful entrepreneur, marketing, money, and much, much more. How to create a business doing just what you love. How to own it, your business and your life. This one will be fast, funny, feisty, and very lively. So sit back and enjoy the show.
Morning.
Morning. Yes, morning. Hello, how are you?
I better be prompt this week. Oh,
yes, quite. Otherwise you'd get a roasting, wouldn't you?
I would get a roasting, and not in a good way, like chicken and gravy. So how's your week been then?
I was thinking earlier on, it's sort of a strange mixture of chaos and calm, by which I mean I'm very busy, but in between the busyness, it's not very noisy on social media. So there's not hundreds of people posting stuff that I need to keep up with. So it's sort of a strange mixture. It feels very busy. I've still got 3 days to go. It's Thursday, the 14th, and I've got quite a lot of writing to do today and a group tonight. And then I think 3 clients tomorrow, and then I think 2 on Saturday. So it's right up to the wire, because then I'm off for 2 or 3 weeks, really. But it feels that. But I realised that I forgot to tell you last week, almost the most interesting bit of the Amazon rant. Do you remember where I ranted for hours about couldn't make up my mind whether to print my book on Amazon or not, and caved in the end? I forgot to tell you the best bit, which was many, many times over the last decade or so, I've gone to do something at the computer and the computer says no, and I think, oh, it's a sign. But what I usually do is bully my way through anyway, and then if the computer originally said no, things don't work out particularly well. So when I eventually caved and said, oh, all right then, and uploaded to CreateSpace, it went like a dream. So I went, oh, well, that's a good omen, isn't it? Think, that obviously I've made the right decision there. Well, later that same night, CreateSpace wrote back to say your ISBN number is in use by somebody else in the States.
No.
Therefore, we can't do anything for you. You'll have to prove that you own your own ISBN number. You'll have to... Anyway, went back to Nielsen that I bought it from in the UK, and they sent back a very tetchy email saying this is because Amazon insists on only searching one register of ISBN numbers in the States, typically, called Bowker, B-O-W-K-E-R. And what you'll have to do is you'll have to open up an account with Bowker and prove to Bowker that you own your own ISBN number. Well, now, because everybody's on sort of California time, what this meant was that CreateSpace would write to me at midnight most nights. And then I found myself in this sort of 4-way correspondence between me, CreateSpace, Nielsen, and Bowker. And this raged for days and days and days. Well, 10 days. It's added another 10 days to this thing. And sort of is the reverse of the other thing I told you, where originally computer says no, and then it turns out badly. In this example, computer said yes, and it still turned out badly. Anyway.
Yeah, I just get my barcodes from CreateSpace when I upload them.
Well, I didn't know I was going to use CreateSpace at the point that I bought my solo ISBN number. And actually, if you do that, you don't own your imprint, which I wanted to do. So you're not publishing your book, CreateSpace is. But anyway, back to the point. What might happen in the middle of the podcast today is the doorbell might go, and it might be my first physical copy being delivered, which they've promised for today.
Well, that would be extremely exciting, wouldn't it?
Yes, because eventually they gave me permission to use my own ISBN number in the middle of Strictly Come Dancing on Saturday. And at that point, I was able to order one. And it said, if you pay this sum of money, $14 or something, it'll be with you by Thursday. So that would be
and more exciting than the usual postman delivery, which I rather miss somewhat.
Well, I don't really get post anymore because I've got a virtual office. I get it all digitally, and I almost get none of it anymore. I don't really want snail mail. In fact, I've had to say rather rudely to a couple of people who've sent me messages saying, what's your address? If you're thinking of sending me a Christmas card, don't. And yesterday, the virtual office scanned me a Christmas card that somebody had sent, which is quite funny. Anyway, tell me about your week.
Well, it started off, you're going to laugh at this, with no internet for 4 days. After you didn't have any last week.
I know.
Someone drove a JCB up against a telephone pole or dug through something crucial on the road to Agios Nikolaos, and the whole area was off. So it was only just a very specific area, though. So we were all scrambling around for people we knew that had internet, and it wasn't just internet; it was the landlines were out, which meant somehow also the mobile signal was out. So I couldn't even do my data roaming hotspot tethering thing. So, and not only was the landline, the internet, the mobile out, but it meant that there was no telly either for 4 days. On, the weekend is quite a crucial X Factor situation, even though I managed to ruin the results of X Factor myself last week by logging in to watch the last show, and the ITV presented me with the winner, which was jolly annoying. After you'd managed not to tell me, which was a bit crossing up. But apart from that, I did actually start on my improving reading list. With the ladies of Right Club are drawing me up a list of books I absolutely have to read, and the first one was The Women's Room. And it was really quite astonishing.
I read that in about 1980, maybe even earlier. But remind me of the author's name. Her first name begins with M, doesn't it? Marilyn French. Marilyn French, yes. Yeah. I have read that, but a very long time ago when I was learning to be a feminist about 40 years ago, Nicola.
I know. Well, I was already a bit of a feminist. Well, I've been a bit of a feminist. My mother brought me up like one. So... I was reading this and I was thinking, it's a bit depressing, isn't it, really? Because I was reading about the bits where they're all, trying to be good housewives and submitting to their husbands and all this stuff. But it really picks up about a third of the way through, and it really is a rattling good read even now. Worse than that, though, it makes you hate every man you come into contact with.
I know, it does. Yes, that's, well, there you go.
Not the poor loves, though. They've been brought up to be the ruling classes, and it's only now that we're managing to resist the blandishments of the whole thing. But anyway, I think it seriously made me not want to get into another relationship ever again. So that was good. I released.
Well, that's good and bad in a way. I mean, that last comment made me seriously want to not get into a relationship ever again. If that's what one book's done for you, I mean, we've got to be careful with you in this reading list.
I was on the edge anyway. And then episode 4 was released of Right Club. I wrote two more chapters because obviously being without internet, you don't realise how much it distracts you from deep work, as they call it. I got really so bored that I actually wrote 2 more chapters of my sci-fi novel. And I started planning out all the scenes and what's called the story beats, although I'm not 100% sure what those are yet. But apparently you sort of visualise the story arc and and then you start to think about scenes that would move the story along at certain crucial points. And then you can put those into a spreadsheet, Judith. So I've got my novel being planned out on a spreadsheet, and also some little cards that Steph just bought me, but I'm not sure what to do with those yet. So it's been a very busy week.
Going back to the point about how distracting the internet is, most of the writers I know have 2 computers, one of which is not connected to the internet, and that's the one they do the writing on.
Yeah, I'm finding I'm doing a lot of my planning down the calf with my notebook, my Moleskine, because I do feel like a proper author now. So I'm doing quite a lot of the creative planning away from the computer, and it's only when I actually want to type a chapter that I come to the computer. Yeah, so I'm thoroughly enjoying all that. It's very busy. So like you say, but I know what you mean. There's definitely a feeling of a slowdown behind the scenes, isn't there? I mean, my Clicks and Leads Academy very much emptier and quieter than it is normally.
Yeah, because I think it's what I call the nativity play factor. People with children are rushed off their trousers doing, going to all of the school end of term stuff and buying things for Christmas, which I don't have to buy, and, madness, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad. I'm glad I'm not into it. All I've got is a Secret Santa for Chloe to buy this year. So
good.
I'll consult Phoebe and buy something presumably online or at Primark.
Is that how your family are doing it? You're divvying each other up and being a Secret Santa for one person? Yeah.
So many of us this year. I mean, obviously I'll buy stuff for the kids and Irving, but, just Irving and I always exchange a little gift, usually wine. And I always obviously get stuff for the kids, but, some of the children are abundant and some of them are not so at the moment. So, and obviously Alex is over, although I've seen no sign of my brother. He arrived apparently 2 days ago from Sydney, and there's not been a whisker of him on FaceTime or anything. So either they're lying to me that he's here or he's still jet lagged and can't come to the
yes, if I were him, I'd be sleeping it off.
So what's fueled your fire this week then?
Oh, well, I had a very nice experience on Tuesday. I was interviewed by a man, and both he and I felt that we knew one another before we spoke, although we didn't. When I was blogging every day in December 2006 from my island, I received an email from a woman that said, "You are living my ideal life." And she joined my list, and over the years we've come to know one another, and she's had a few sessions and blah, blah, blah. And I then accidentally or simultaneously fell into a group that they know, where the woman who owned the alternative health centre in Canary Wharf, she and I used to swap. She was a cranial, sacral, whatever you call them, and I would give her business coaching. So I would go to her health centre for the cranial, and she would come to my flat for the coaching. And she had some friends called Annette and Amanda who live in Whitstable. And Kerry, the lady that wrote to me to say you're living my ideal life, lived in Whitstable with Frank. Now, Frank is the man that interviewed me on Tuesday. And frankfoley.co.uk has 2 degrees in English literature, a BA, a first degree, and an MA, a second degree. Oh. And he crafts and tutors his own courses in English literature. And his current project is about exploring the power of stories, the truth in the fiction and the fiction in the truth. And he's doing a series of interviews called The Stories of Our Lives. And I felt like I knew Frank through all of these people, although I'd never met him. He's very handsome. And I knew that he did something with English literature, which is obviously an interest of mine. And I'm just going to have a look at his website because there was a couple of things I wanted to tell you about. Yeah. So one of the courses that he's running in January is called Truth in Fiction, a 10-week online workshop based around 3 books: The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro, Ian McEwan's Atonement, and Ford Maddox Ford's The Good Soldier, which I read at school. In fact, I've read all 3 of those books. And, he's trying to get us all to see ourselves, the truth in the fiction and the fiction in the truth. Oh. And he reminds me of how much I loved my English literature teacher in the lower and upper 6th at school, and how much English literature spoke to me in those days, which is a coincidence because I was telling the people last night at a party I went to that my book was coming today, and that I'd always wanted to be a writer since I was a teenager and nobody had encouraged me in it. And funnily enough, when I'm listening to you, I know I don't want to write fiction, all that thing about deep work, story beats, no, right turn off for me. But lots of my clients do it, and good on them, because it's much harder than the sort of writing I do. But anyway, the point of the story is that Frank and I felt like a couple of old souls when we eventually talked. And because we had so many people in common, because I knew story was the context of the thing, I sent him a copy of my book. And he got very excited. And of course, my story is the first chapter of the book. And so he asked me some very pertinent questions like, if you could go back to that 10-year-old girl, what would you say to her? And one of his questions was, does God roll dice? I mean, he had got some fantastic questions, and we just connected over, a common interest and some common people. And may there be more of those. I intend to do 52 of those, and I think he's number 3 or 4 on the list that I've done. A couple of interviews and a couple of pieces of blog content that somebody asked me to provide. And it's just a sort of lovely story where it comes full circle. And when he came on, Skype, we did it on Zoom like you and I do on this. And when he came on, he felt a little bit shy because he didn't really know me, and he said hello and I went hi, and he said, as soon as you said hi, I just knew it was all going to be all right. I just said one tiny little word. Oh. And it's just I met a lovely man doing a wonderful thing for a living, connected to a bunch of great women that I know. And ironically, on the day he interviewed me, I was nomading in Kent, not very far away from him.
Oh, funny. It sounds like we ought to interview him for the podcast. Well,
interestingly, yes. I'll tell you why. Because he wants to podcast. And when I said to him, I'll do this interview, but I won't do it on video. Let's do it on, Nicola and I do. He said, what about Zoom? I said, oh, yeah, Nicola and I do our podcast on Zoom, and we don't look at each other or show videos. And he said, then he clearly, before my interview, went off and listened to our podcast. So he wants to become a podcaster. And words are very much his thing. And I think you'll enjoy some of these interviews on the site already, because it's just about a great conversation where you listen to each other. And we had no agenda before it started. We didn't know where it would go. He didn't give me any guidelines. He didn't send me any instructions in advance. I felt a little bit nervous beforehand, but I think that's part of the course, really. Anyway, there you go. Frank.
Yeah, frankfoley.com, you said?
.co.uk.
.co.uk. Well, you'll put a link in the show notes.
I will, yeah.
Excellent. Well, it sounds great. Sounds really interesting. Okay, so I have a client who, Kate Cocker, as you know, 12 weeks, and her mum-in-law is my friend.
Steph.
Steph, who looks after Kate and her husband, Tim, who started a podcast called Egg Chasers, of which you're aware.
Yep.
And now does an awful lot of television presenting work for rugby and football and things like that.
Who does, Kate or Steph or the husband?
Tim, the husband. Yes.
Yeah.
He works a lot with television stations, Sky and things like that. So
okay.
The podcast for him was a route to his ideal career, which he absolutely loves. He's very handsome indeed.
And so is Frank, by the way.
Comparing notes of handsome men this week, just so
yes.
I've read the women's room. Anyway, so Kate, and I was having a chat with, Kate just pops up occasionally and tells me, you'll never guess what, and all the wonderful things that have happened to her since doing, my Be Everywhere Online thing. And we were having this discussion because she's going to pivot into webinar tuition for business people because Steph feels that there's a really big untapped market there. But I said to her, so do you want to carry on with the over Christmas, with the promoting your radio content? She said, oh yes, why not? She said, and yet another one-to-one client popped up the other day, and I was talking to Steph behind the scenes, and she said, it's just been so marvellous for her because her diary is completely full up now. That she's got an online diary now, which she never had before. And her diary is completely full up now, she said, and she's put all the negotiating over to me so that, Steph's edging up her hourly. Well, she doesn't do an hourly rate anymore. She does, I've talked to them about packaging so that they're packaging stuff together. And I told you that she'd sold her first course, didn't I? After we finished the 12 weeks, which was hilarious. Lovely, lovely man from Sri Lanka. And his name's Wellington. Putting up her rate because she's so busy she can't cope. Lots of new business. She said she's never been busier, and it's just such a joy for me. Angela, my singing teacher client at that level, just going from strength to strength, carrying on with her Sunday night live singing lessons on Facebook Live. And I just thought, I really want to work with more people like this who've got a real talent, who just want to get in front of more people. And there's some sort of combination going on between the support to do regular content creation and the leveraging of that content afterwards, so that these busy people can get on with whatever they're doing for their passion and mission and vocation, while everything else just rattles along behind the scenes. And I just thought, when the internet went off for 4 days, I was so grateful that we do our stuff a week in advance. I was pretty confident it would come back on before that, and I'd already done that week's V-zine because Sarah and Phoebe keep me on track with doing everything regularly. And I just thought, I just want to work with more of that. So I'm going to open up a mastermind level, I think, where it's going to be like Clicks and Leads Academy, as is, with all the video trainings and stuff, but it's for people who want to work and have more accountability on a weekly basis. I think 1 call a week at mastermind level would be just about right, in addition to the group calls. So I'm working on up what that looks like, how to market it, and I think I'm going to offer it at my workshop, which is now pretty much completely full. I think I've only got 2 spaces left for that now. And so, that's what's fueled my fire this week. You can hear in my voice, I'm very excited about it.
I'm going to give you a piece of feedback, if I may, and I think you'll like it. There was a word you used in that story that really jumped out at me, and it fits very much with Kate and Angela. And the word you said was talent, because what they've both got is talent, which makes the content easy. Not easy to create, but easy, possible. So actually, instead of sitting at home thinking, oh God, what am I going to put in my content today? If you're a talented person who's willing to share that talent with the world, the actual subject matter of your content is rich and varied and multiple, many, you know what I'm saying? So maybe the talent is the key bit there.
Yes, because the first thing I do is get people to assess what is effortless for them. Is it writing? Is it speaking to camera? Is it interviewing people or talking to people, having a conversation?
Yeah,
I get people to think about how they can most effortlessly create a weekly piece of content. And Kate's content, a little radio presenter tips. Some of them are only 3 or 4 bits long. They're not, they're just one thing. and she got recognised for being the lady in Waitrose, and
Yeah.
that video was.
I also think short clips are better, because actually, if we can, it's a bit like a short book you can read tonight and implement tomorrow. A short tip that makes you go, yes, is better than something that takes a long time to explain, frankly.
Absolutely. I mean, Frank Kern calls it results in advance, doesn't he? Where you give a tip that someone can go away and implement and get a result from, and that moves them along.
Very nice.
Along to the along the spectrum of trusting you, because if they take 10 or 12 tips and implement each one and see a measurable result in your business, then they're going to want to come and work with you, aren't they?
I've promised somebody over the Christmas holidays that I will watch a lot of Frank Kern with them, because they've got access to his videos, and really watching a lot of Frank Kern couldn't be a bad thing, could it?
We're back on handsome men again.
We are. There's our third handsome man of the day.
Not as handsome as he used to be, isn't it?
No, because he's got a funny, different look now. I prefer the sort of surfer dude look. He's all gone a bit sort of groomed and greasy haired now, hasn't he? Yeah,
he is, but he's married, so hey.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah, that'll be good then. Watching, that's not exactly a hardship, is it?
No, it depends how many there are. If it goes on for hours and hours and hours and hours, that would be a hardship, but we'll see.
Here at Own It, we personally believe that leaders are readers, but sometimes it's just not convenient to read and you'd rather listen instead. For listeners of Own It the podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. A couple of titles we've picked out for you particularly are Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg or Crush It, Why Now is the Time to Cash In on Your Passion by Gary Vaynerchuk. To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/ownit. Again, that's audibletrial.com/ownit for your free audiobook. You can pick one of the ones I've chosen for you, or you can choose something else. Enjoy your listen.
Right, focus of the week then.
We're going to talk about 2017. How was it for you? Would you like to go first?
Oh, well, I don't know. I just did a load of talking, so you go first.
Okay, so mine has often been quite difficult, quite a lot of losses, and all of which I've survived. But surviving losses is, I already knew I was a tough and plucky bird. Did I need any more survival skills? I now know I can survive falling over. I now know I can survive the loss of the internet for days, the loss of the heat for days, power cuts. It's made me flaky, which I don't like very much, where I've had to reschedule a lot of stuff. I don't know whether I'll be able to make the podcast, don't know whether I'll be able to make the group call, don't know whether I'll be able to make the one-to-one calls. Don't like that. But, clients are flexible. It's me that's not flexible. I don't like doing that. It's just most uncomfortable for me to be not 100% reliable. But of course, when the things on which you rely are outside your control. Yesterday I was talking to a client in Edinburgh, well, two clients in Edinburgh, but during the first one, there was a man up a telegraph pole outside the window. And I said, oh my God, there's a man up my pole outside the window. I can't guarantee that we'll be able to finish this call. And he did an extraordinary thing, Nicola. He put a piece of coloured plastic inside, and he fiddled about with a lot of things that looked like wood. He put the woody stuff inside a plastic bag and took a photograph of it all and shut the box again and went away. Now, what on earth was that about?
No, you're asking me.
Well, doesn't even sound tech, does it? Anyway, let me go on to my year. So I struggled with this, actually, after saying to you last week, let's review our year. I suppose, first of all, I congratulate us on another 50 podcasts. Not to be taken lightly, because going back to that point I just made about, I don't like being a flake. The fact that we've both turned up in the same place at the same time for 50 episodes for a third year running is nothing short of miraculous, really. And there's quite a lot of similar heroic type of things here. But before I get into the similar heroic type of things, of course, I've written a book. I suppose that's my highlight of 2017. And not only have I written a book, I've written the book that I always wanted to write, but I didn't know what it was. And then I just had a genius idea and it flowed out of me, and it's been quite quick and I've loved it and I'm proud of it. So I've written a book and I've had a photo shoot and ended up with some photos I really like a lot. And they sound like easy things to say. Oh, look at me, I've written a book and I've had some photos taken. But actually, they're quite milestone-y achievements.
Yeah, the photos are fab. And the book,
they're good.
Yeah,
she did great. She did great. And she'll be listening, Alison from Lossymouth. She did great. Now, this year, I read an article last week where Sharon Gaskin, who you and I both know,
Yeah.
had completed a challenge for 2017. And you'll like this, I think, from Goodreads. You know the website called Goodreads, which is a fantastic website for inspirational quotes, by the way. And the challenge was to read 52 books, i.e. one a year. And I thought, I've read a lot of books this year. I wonder how many I've read. So I went to my account at Amazon, because I buy everything, 100% of my books on Kindle, which was the topic of last week's rant. And I've read 45, and it's only the 14th of December, and I'm going to be on holiday for the next 3 weeks. So technically, I could get up to 52. And if you go to Goodreads and look at the 52 book challenge for 2018, they give you lots of, I won't use any of it, but they give you lots of lovely prompts about how you might choose the 52 books. So you don't just read 52 detective novels by your favorite author. It gives you these prompts. One week the book's got to begin with a certain letter. Another week it's got to be a memoir. Another week it's got to be a travel book. It doesn't have to be, but it gives you the prompts, which is why I won't submit to Goodreads' way of doing it, unless I get stuck, I suppose. But I've already opened up a wish list at Amazon and put Judith's 52 books for 2018 on it. And yesterday a client gave me 3 tips. So I've loaded 3 books on there already. And actually, Chris, we always admire Chris Barrow for how much reading he does, and you do a lot of reading, but to have a sort of deliberate intention around it. Well, I'm applauding myself for my 45, which seems like a lot, and I'm going for 52 next year. So there's a sort of achievement one there. Something that is so constant in my life, I almost take it for granted, and yet I'm so grateful for it that I don't, and I nearly forgot to write it down on the list, was another year of doing client work that I love.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
it's a joy, isn't it?
It is a joy. It's a joy. I've made a difference to that one. I made a difference to that 50 this year. And that's, that you can do work like that when you're age 62 and perhaps go on with it as part of perhaps a third career. I don't know. And the other one that I gave you a hint on in advance and you were a bit wowed by, I'm 15 months into my low carb way of eating and just a few pounds short of 6 stone lost.
That's unbelievable.
I know, but it's unbelievable, and yet it's not unbelievable, because it isn't a diet. You just don't eat carbohydrate. So if you don't eat carbohydrate or drink carbohydrate, it's the inevitable result of that. So it is. We're inclined to use language like it's unbelievable, because actually, if I'd been on a diet for 15 months, it would have been unbelievable. But once my carbohydrate addiction went, I've just realised 2 things. One related to this. The booze is the challenge in the Morgan family. There's, serial alcoholism in the DNA. And I realised into this 15 months at some point that what's in booze but carbohydrate, which is, wine and beer, carbohydrate, and that's my addiction too. So actually I have exactly the same addiction as my family, but both parties had never realised it, and they probably won't realise it. I don't think they think of booze as carbohydrates, but it is in the main, except for vodka, obviously. So that feels quite good. And I had a...
Back up. Everyone says that about vodka, but I still don't understand, because it's made from potatoes. So how?
They must. If you Google it, the answer is there. I haven't Googled it because I don't care enough, but I do know that it is. And it must be like when you put alcohol in a pudding, you burn all the alcohol off.
Okay.
It must be something like that. Whatever process it goes through, it hasn't. I don't know whether it hasn't got any carbs or it's just phenomenally low carb. Okay. And phenomenally low carb is a very useful thing to do. In fact, I have a delivery today of phenomenally low carb snacks arriving, and they include, macadamia nut bars, French biscuits, and freeze-dried dark chocolate covered raspberries. So you are allowed things as long as they're phenomenally low carb. And last night I went to a party and I had little sausages wrapped in bacon, chicken, fish, smoked salmon, cream cheese. They're all low carb. So as long as I swerve chocolate, and fortunately the big difficult item at Christmas is not a problem for me because I don't like it. Can't bear a mince pie. Would you like a mince pie? Oh, no, thank you. Ugh.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of... So Christmas, actually, this is my second low-carb Christmas, isn't the problem. Easter's the problem, when what you really want is one of those extra thick Easter eggs with a gazillion carbs in each one. And the other realisation that I had this year, and I'd kind of always known it, but never said it out loud, admitted it to myself, and the people have started to say it. It started with John's forward, actually. I've realised how much I love to make people laugh.
Oh.
Not in a stand-up comedic way. No, not in a stand-up comedic way, but in the written and the spoken word. I love to make people laugh.
It's good fun. It really is, yes. It's marvellous when people laugh at something you've said.
But I think I've laid claim to it, whereas before I've kind of known that they laughed and enjoyed them laughing, but not thought to myself, oh, you really like doing that. And this year I've fessed up to myself, you really like doing that. And, you know, I'm funny. I can't help myself. And I like people laughing when I make a joke.
Well, whenever I'm looking for the funny bits for the beginning of the podcast, for me, it's always something you've said. Something I've said.
Well, yeah, that's funny, isn't it? And when you gave me the mandate for that, if you remember, you didn't say funny. You said, could you be eccentric?
Yes.
So it's something eccentric that I do that makes you laugh, really.
It is your eccentricity that makes me laugh indeed.
Well, exactly. Anyway, so that's my year, really, and it sounds quite dull. I don't have massive achievements, but you tell me about yours.
Hang on a minute. You got a book and you've lost 6 stone.
Well, I've lost 6 stone in a bit longer than this year, but yeah, I mean, I know they're all personal. There's nothing in my business because my business is 15 years old now and I don't have any plans to transform it. And it just goes forward doing the thing that it does very nicely.
Yes, and that's lovely to have got. That's very peaceful and restful to have got to that place and be confident enough that it's going to continue to do so if you continue to do the things that you do. Yes,
I must say, if I didn't have other investments, it wouldn't keep me. I mean, it's very nice, thank you very much. I'm not complaining. But if it wasn't part of my whole fiscal picture, I would have to up my game considerably, which I'm not sure I want to do as a 62-year-old woman, to be honest.
No, it's so funny you should say that because I was thinking that the other day. I was thinking, because Irving started making noises to the children, and I call them the children, they're 22 and 20, that he and Joe in a couple of years might want to go and live somewhere else for a while, just try, living in another country.
Yeah.
Which would mean they'd have to find somewhere else to live. I don't know if they've grasped that yet, because I'm not sure how totally direct he was.
Yes.
I'll find out when I get home.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, because they've both got passions, like Nelson loves music and he's making music and he's, doing lots of things around music, but he's not convinced he can make a living doing that. So he works in an alternative cafe in Shoreham. Phoebe does her YouTube videos and she gets paid to help other people with personal branding videos, which she gets paid well for. I pay her to do my V-zine, but there's something stopping her from going and finding a job in a digital agency doing video. I don't know what. It's fear of some kind. I'll get to the bottom of that when I get home as well. But I was thinking to myself, it actually doesn't matter because they can start investing in property by buying a flat, perhaps between them.
Yeah.
Steve left them some money, both of them, and that will come through at some point, and they'll be able to put a deposit on a flat. And that will get them started. And, there's other things they could invest in. For example, all currencies are going mental at the moment, so they could put little bits of money into that regularly and just wait for it to grow. And I thought it doesn't actually mean that they need to earn a living from their passions and the things they do every day. They could actually build up a financial security in the background from other investments. And I was feeling quite cheered by that idea because the thought that, Nelson had his little foray into Cubicleville and he just absolutely hated it. And the thought that someone, in 2 years' time, their dad might bugger off and they might have to go and get a horrible job somewhere just to put a roof over their head was quite depressing. So I'm going to encourage them to think of, other investments fueling their lifestyle.
Yeah, or underpinning it, yes.
Yeah, underpinning it, exactly.
Which gives you more choice in what you use your time for.
Well, you don't have to earn so much from your passion, do you? You don't have to...
No, and I don't have to sell, 6-figure courses.
Yes, that's true. It gives you choices on how you...
Which I might have to if I didn't have anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, so shall I whiz through my year then?
Yes, I'll just finish off by saying, it was often a difficult year, but I think it's ended well and I'm feeling more upbeat. I realised when I was writing the notes for this that I've gone round a corner in the last month maybe. I'm feeling more upbeat about life and business now on this beautiful, bright, sunny day in December than I have been for some time, actually.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that because you were a little bit down.
Which is going to be reflected in my word of the week, but I'll keep that up my sleevey while you tell me about your 2017.
All right, well, I'm going to rattle through it month by month, but you'll be glad to hear it's very, very short notes for each one.
Okay.
January started out super cold in Greece, the coldest winter for 20 years. We were absolutely perishing, and looking back on it, I don't know how we survived it, really. But I did launch my app and my membership site, which was, I'd invested some money that I got from a little pension in getting some good tech set up. I also started to get my first big affiliate commission checks from a certain person. And I realised that was because one of my blog posts had got to number 1 in the category, for a certain search term that lots of people are searching. So I realised that that was converting very nicely into rather big affiliate commissions, because they weren't the kind of people I could help. So I was directing them off to someone who could help them better. February again.
Just hang on, so I need to ask a very short question here. Have you resolved the issue with that?
It's been resolved at the other end. I don't think anything I've done has resolved it. I think that perhaps they were just going through a disorganised phase, and it's been much better.
Okay. All right, good.
February, super cold again. Released the Mindset, Money and Marketing book. In retrospect, I think it needed more editing, and I think that's still a job for me to do, because I got some quite negative feedback because I hadn't edited it as carefully as I should have done. So for once, my go at it like a train attitude let me down on that one, I think. But I'm going to get number 2 ready soon, and I'm going to get the same editor to do who does number 2 to go back and do number 1. That's, of course, the good thing about Kindle and CreateSpace is you can upload a new manuscript inside manuscript. March, it started to warm up and the wildflowers started happening. It was also the anniversary of Steve's death, and I did find the week before that particularly difficult. But you just remember every moment of what you were doing this time last year, in the week coming up to it. But as soon as it passed, I definitely felt a lightening of spirit. And the wildflowers around here are just absolutely spectacular. It's every olive grove has got carpets of flowers, and they're all mixed up and wild. Oh, it's just beautiful. It's also when I realised that I might have something in the Be Everywhere Online concept. If I pulled that together properly and started to market it as a thing itself, I might have something that my signature program, if you like. So that was good. April. It was getting really nice out here, and we were very reluctant to leave, but I had to go back to the UK. But it was good because I went off to Cardiff to work with Angela, who's doing so well, and I went up to Sunderland to visit Irene. And when I was in Sunderland, it really made me realise that I could be a lot more mobile than I think I can. So going to Sunderland cost me 153 quid return and took 8 hours each way or something stupid. And I thought, well, I can get to Greece and back in that time for half the money. So you could go to Greece and come back a lot more often than you're thinking you could. I stopped feeling trapped in one country, put it that way.
And actually, it was that experience of the 153 quid in the 8 hours that made you go back to Greece much sooner than you were planning, if you remember.
Yeah, I do remember that, yes.
Yeah, you just went straight back after Sunderland because it's like, why am I sitting here?
Well, I had 6 more weeks to kill until my little house was ready on the 1st of July. And I thought, where do I want to spend those 6 weeks? Do I want to spend them in England or do I want to spend them in Greece? I know exactly where I want to be. So I came back, and May, the weather was starting to get very lovely. It's so nice in April and May because it's hot. The sun's hot, but it's not as hot overall as it is in July and August. So I started spending a lot of time on the beach, and that's when I rediscovered my love of reading. I started, the only place I can read. Well, the only place that is, I'm finding it's very easy to read on the beach. And I did some research about why being on the beach made me feel so good. Something about, digging your toes into warm sand and looking at blue sea and blue sky. And there's the ozone factor. And the fact that apparently there's quite a positive thing about hearing waves all the time because they are arrhythmic. They're not annoying because they don't sort of, go on in a rhythmic fashion. They're always changing, and that apparently makes your brain waves change and makes you feel more relaxed, which was nice. And I remember in May I had my first glimmer of hope and happiness. That's what I called it, because it was the first glimmer of, when you're younger and you have flashes of happiness where you just think, oh, everything's perfect, and you're full of hope for the future. And I hadn't really felt that for a very long time. So that was nice. That was May. Also, of course, all the eye candy starts arriving in May. Young Greek guys start coming out and working in the tavernas, and it's really quite entertaining.
This is now the handsome men episode of the podcast, isn't it? Number 162.
Yeah, I started meeting some very attractive young men who were very friendly, and they're not as aloof as they are in England. They're much more ready for a chat, So that was nice. June, I went to Brisbane. I didn't want to go. I was terrified of going. There was lots of anxiety around it. But Neil bamboozled me into it, and I went, and I had a fantastic time. I had a lovely time with him. I had a lovely time with all his 3 days of hanging out with his Aussie entrepreneurs. It's 27% of the room bought my Be Everywhere Online program, which was rather splendid. I also started Greek lessons in June, I've realised. That hasn't progressed very far, by the way. Greek is very difficult. July, it was all about the beach in July. It was so hot, but it was so lovely. So every day I'd race to get any work that I wanted to do done by, 2 o'clock at the latest, so I could get down the beach and just swim. And swimming 4 or 5 times a day, in and out, marvellous. Again, August was all about the beach. Now, it's around this time I met Kate Cocker, because she came out with her family and to stay with Steph, and we got talking, and Steph knew that we'd get on, and then we cooked up this scheme to work together. And also around this time, I came across the name Clicks and Leads Academy to describe what I'd been calling my inner circle, but really was just such a no-name word. It just didn't really say what it did. And I wanted to keep the Clicks and Leads branding, even though I wasn't doing, Facebook ads unless it was for, personal referrals anymore. So I was really pleased to come up with the name Clicks and Leads Academy, and that the domain name was available, because we like a nice domain name, don't we?
We do, yes.
Yeah. So September, that was when I decided to have my workshop in December, because that's when Alex announced he was coming home. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to have to go to the UK to see him, and I might as well do a workshop in between Christmas and New Year, because I was worried about being bored. And I announced it just on an email, and it really, 3/4 of it sold out pretty much immediately. I was astonished that, we always used to think of filling workshops as really hard work, didn't we? But I thought, I'll just throw it up there and see what happens. And it booked up to the point where it's worth going ahead immediately, which was great. So I'm now thinking I'm going to do them quarterly. So not quarterly, sorry, 3 times a year. I'm going to do one in April and one in September, probably. Yeah, so that was that. October. What happened in October? This is when I started to get serious about the book, because I thought they're going to drum me out of Write Club soon if I don't write something. I was writing short stories, but not really doing anything about my book. But that's when the ideas started to come. And that was when Steph had the idea for the Write Club podcast as well. So we started getting together more often, and I like that. So we would get together fortnightly just to talk about writing. But then on the other week, we were talking about the podcast. So that was nice. Social life, all through this, my social life's picking up. I didn't really do much in Jan, Feb and March, but I was really starting to get to know quite a lot more people as the year progressed. So there were lots of nice people to meet. There was lots of dinners to be had, lots of parties to go to. And what else happened? November. November's been the month of alternative currencies and learning about blockchain technology and all that stuff. I still don't really understand blockchain. I've got more of a glimmer than I had. It's all about technology that solves certain problems. But it's been a brilliant month on the alt currencies front. I've doubled my money, which has been really nice. And also, we launched the podcast in November for Write Club, and the Faber's Professional Writing Academy have just done a feature on us, which is really exciting. And the girls are just thrilled with how it's going. They sort of regard the technology as rather, obviously not Steph, because she's got people in the family who do podcasts, but the other ladies are like, they can't believe you can sit around a table and gas and then turn it into something that 100-odd people in places like Japan and United Arab Emirates are listening to. That's magic for them, which is really nice.
Well, it is magic in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And where do these people come from, they say? I don't know, I say, but they come anyway. And then finally, obviously, December. It's now December, and I'm about to go home and hang out with my entire family. I wonder how long we'll last without someone falling out with someone else. We'll see. That's a nice positive note to end it on, isn't it?
It is. And while you were banging on there, and I was taking quite a lot of intense notes so I can work out what I'm going to put in the blog, I noticed the quote on your Chrome at the bottom, which says, "You can't use up creativity. The more you use, the more you have," which is lovely.
So true, isn't it? Yeah, people worry about only having one idea, and that if that idea doesn't work, that'll be it. That's them done. But actually, it doesn't work like that at all, does it? The idea is going, which is
no. In fact, it liberates. It's like, I always think it's like one of those gravy boats that separates the fat off the top and puts the meaty juices underneath. If you pour the fat off, you're just left with the meaty juices underneath. More good stuff comes through.
Yes, I love those things. I used to have one of those.
Yeah.
But now I have no possessions at all. What possessions I have will fit into 2 suitcases. So
I have almost no possessions either. It's liberating, isn't it?
wow, I love it.
Yeah.
I've got one picture of Irving and the kids, and I've got one picture of Steve, and then downstairs I've got different pictures of those combinations of people, and my clothes, and that's it. On my computer.
Far less to look after. Absolutely liberating.
It is. But I am very lucky to be living in a very nice little house that was decorated nicely, so that makes a difference. You know, they've left just enough of their black and white pictures of old Greek ladies for me to feel like it's a house rather than what's the word I'm looking for? A dormitory. That's us done on that bit then. So
okay.
Blum 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 blum.
What is your word of the week?
Well, it's optimistic. Because I suppose I always have this feeling at this time of year, but after a difficult year, I'm optimistic that 2018 is going to be great.
Well, good. Let me hope so, because you deserve it. God's sake.
There have been times that have been testing.
Yeah. Mine is work, because I've had a lot of thinking about work, because people think the Greeks, there's this popular conception that Greek is in the financial troubles it is because the Greeks are lazy. Actually, they've got a really, really, really dysfunctional government system and everything, but the actual Greeks themselves work like dogs. I mean, Elias, my mate, who's got one of the most popular tavernas in the village, he, 5 staff from lunchtime onwards to midnight, they don't stop. And
Elias has got more jobs than you can shake a stick at, hasn't he?
He is the raging entrepreneur, but Last Sunday, was it Sunday I came back from somewhere? I can't remember. Anyway, there was beating stick noises, and there was Elias and his boys out beating people's olives to get, hard blooming work. And, the poor man, he's just done a whole season of tavernering, and now he's beating olive trees and sawing up olive wood and things. It's, I just got so much respect for all of them. And the other thing that made me think of work is because someone said something last weekend along the lines of, I don't work weekends. And I thought, and I had a conversation with Phoebe about this, because she's now got a new job working in a trendy cafe on Lancing Seafront. And she was editing my V-zine in between shifts at the cafe, and then she was going out. And I thought, well, she doesn't think about weekends as a particular time. And I thought, well, the only other person I know that takes a lot of time off and talks about weekends and things like that is Judith. But then I thought, hang on, last Saturday, Judith was coming up with brilliant ideas for her books.
Well, I always work on Saturdays, actually. I just never work on Sundays, because I think you've got to have one day off that's sacrosanct. Otherwise, people would encroach on that one as well. Yeah.
But it is more about, and I was thinking about the whole thing about, the kids and Irving, and I was thinking about, if you've got work you love, it doesn't feel like work, does it? It feels like being creative and doing fun things and learning new stuff. And I know, learning new stuff is quite hard work sometimes, and you shouldn't try to do too much of it all at once. But I was just thinking how lucky we are to have work we love, that I would happily edit a podcast any day of the week. I'm not, I enjoy it. And
I think if anything, what's nice is the flexibility to work whenever the hell you like, or do whatever you want. Somebody said to me, we're watching television in the daytime. It's like, I'll do whatever I like whenever I want. If I want to watch television in the daytime and work in the nighttime, that's my choice.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I was thinking, obviously because all the cryptocurrency mania that's going on, I was thinking, even if Bitcoin does go as berserk as everyone says, I would still carry on working, because I absolutely love what I do. It wouldn't change anything. So there you go. That's my word of the week, work. So project updates then.
I haven't got much news in here, because I was hoping that the postman would deliver my book in the middle of this. So my next project, as it were, is to, once I've had the physical copy and approved it, is to get the print book up for sale. And I think I'll be ahead of schedule. I think that'll be in December, whereas actually I promised everybody it would be in January. So after having got over the hump of the ISBN number, I'm getting close to saying to CreateSpace, yes, I'm happy with it. I mean, I'm pretty happy with it anyway, because Matt was so wonderful, but it did say, since you're a first timer, why don't you have a look at the physical book? So I thought, oh, all right then, might as well. It's only 4 days and we've already wasted 14 or something. So yeah, And that's it. It's all really about the book and thinking of the ways I'm going to market it in 2018. But I'm going to do that over the holidays. I'm not ready to discuss that yet.
Okay. Yeah, I liked your idea. You just, dropped in there about podcasts or blog content.
Yeah, pieces of content on other people's platforms. Yeah.
I love simple structures like that. When you can think of a structure, it gives you a sort of framework to work to, doesn't it? I think that's really helpful.
Well, I'll tell you what I like. The book is 52 questions, as you know, but what I like about 52 pieces of content is, my first idea was that they could all have a question on their blog and we do a blog tour or whatever. But actually, what I like about 52 or the 52 books I'm going to read or whatever it is, if you have a quota, you know when you've done it, you can pat yourself on the back, you can stop, you can put your feet up, you can open a bottle of champagne, you say, hurrah, we've done it. And you might do it earlier than you expected, or you might miss it. But when my clients say things like, I'm going to write 10,000 words this week, and then they write in and say, but I only did 3,000, I go, yeah, but if you hadn't set the intention to write 10, you wouldn't have written 3. So, I think a quota or a target, if I say here 52 pieces of content and I achieve 32, hurrah. The alternative is not to have a number or a plan, and it'll all be a bit haphazard.
Yeah, exactly. And I love the 52 things. It's one a week, and it gets around that entrepreneur's pressure of always feeling like you should do the most you can, as much as you can, all the time.
Yeah, and I don't think it'll average out at one a week. I think there'll be 3 weeks where I don't get any, and then I'll have to do 4 in the next one, that kind of thing. But it's fine.
Yeah. Oh, well, we'll look forward to seeing that unfolding then.
Mm-hmm.
On the podcast updates, we have had still the last 30 days is a very strong upward trend. Let me just show you to prove it to you. There you go. That's 1 month. And the 3 months is levelling out. So we've stopped the downward trend on the 3 months, and we're levelling out now because of good, strong 100, most episodes, lots of days above 100 downloads. So that's good. Okay, so finally, who or what's impressed? I've got 2 on this one.
You go first then.
Okay. First of all, Nathan Haig, not someone I've paid an awful lot of attention to.
Could I just tell you? I had to block him from Facebook messaging me yesterday.
Block him? Was he messaging you personally, or was it?
Yeah, he was doing those spammy messenger usages of,
Oh dear. Well, that's a shame, because what I was going to talk to you about that's impressed me is Nathan
with his brilliant messenger marketing.
Yes.
But yesterday, mine was porn.
No, it wasn't porn. Okay. So this was going to be my qualification about Nathan.
Okay.
Nathan Haig swears a lot, and he's very rude of some of the things he says. It wasn't porn. He was using that as an attention getter on one of his buttons, saying download your porn faster. What he was actually doing was promoting a webinar that tells you how to speed your internet up when you've got shit internet.
So I thought to myself, I daren't click on that. It's marked porn. So actually what I did was, instead of archiving him as I normally do, I blocked him.
Yeah, well, he's done, that was his latest webinar he's done. But the one before that was how to get 1 cent leads. And actually, it's, I sort of knew what it was going to be, and it was. But what he did was he did a very good webinar where he swore a lot through it. So don't go and look him up if you're easily offended. But he did one on how to make a ManyChat workflow that was really natural looking when someone first comes and messages your page. And I swapped over my rather stilted ManyChat. And ManyChat's the thing I'm impressed with as well. It's a bit of software that enables you to set.
Stop. You told us about that last week or the week before, and I've already looked.
Okay, all right. So Nathan Haig's webinar on 1 cent leads, but don't go if you're easily offended, because he does use the F word quite a lot.
Okay. Now
Number 2.
Do
you want to do both?
Yeah.
Okay. There's a thing that I'm not sure what it is, but I'll find out what it is. You can actually put someone's name in it. At Christmas you get those awful Jackie Lawson cards all the time.
Yes. The cards aren't awful, but it's awful to get so many of them, isn't it? Yeah.
Particularly, I don't like them at all. You can actually put a friend's name in this other bit of software, and you can choose 3 adjectives about them, and then it will come up with a list of podcast suggestions that they might enjoy. Which I thought was rather nice. It would be nice if we started popping up on one of those, wouldn't it?
Well, you don't know what it's called. What's it called?
Podcards. But I don't know what the URL is yet, but I'll go and find out.
Okay.
I only learned about it yesterday, so. But it's great. And you can just send people, it's free, and you can just send people the gift of podcast suggestions they might enjoy based on their personality.
Okay.
And yourself?
Well, I'm not going to mention the person's name here, but it is somebody who listens to the podcast. She too has had a difficult final call. Well, she's had a difficult 2017, and she's had a particularly difficult final quarter. And I kept reaching out to her and say, "Book yourself in, let's have a chat." And she was dodging me because she didn't want to describe it to me. And I know what I'm going to say next has never happened to you in the way it's happened to me, but I think it's probably happened to your children and you, which is the minute she heard my voice, she burst into tears, which is what I used to do when sometimes I was being brave and independent and then would end up talking to either my mum or my dad. There's something about a familiar, loving voice that makes you burst into tears. Anyway, so she burst into tears and apologized for it. I said, "Oh, don't apologize for it. I completely know." But she was finally, we got to speak because it had turned around. So she'd been through the fertile void, and she kept sending me messages for a few days before the call. You'll never guess what, you'll never guess what, you'll never guess what. And so, basically somebody who's been through, the fire that we all have to go through from now and again and come through it in time for the end of the year. A lot of health challenges, a lot of business challenges, and she's a woman with a great sense of humour, and we have a lot in common. But she's ended up in a great place. And when you're on your own in business, as pretty much all of us are, tough times are tough. And you don't always want to go to somebody like me or anybody when it's tough. You really want to come when it's better sometimes, which is, skewed logic. But she did, and I'm happy for her.
That's good. Always like to hear people, what's the word?
Well, a jolly crimbo tale, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. A heart-warming tale.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so we better break the bad news, haven't we? We sort of skirted around it last week, but we're taking a couple of weeks off.
Yeah, we're having 2 weeks off. So our next recording is the first Thursday in January, which is called the 4th. And that won't go out until 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12th. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So this one they'll hear on the 22nd of December, and then there'll be a gap for 2 weeks, I think is what's happening.
Which, of course, means I don't get to use my rather spooky Christmas music, what I really like. So,
well, you could put your spooky music on this because it'll go out on the 22nd of December.
Ah, okay. I will indeed.
And I think even on the 4th of January, we were all right to talk about the new year and our hopes and dreams and plans for that, because I don't think the 12th of January is too late for that to be going out. And we can have some Happy New Year on that as well, I think.
We can. So, cue spooky music.
Blum, blum, blum.
You've been listening to Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. The podcast is called Own It, Your Business and Your Life. Do come and visit us at ownitthepodcast.com. We'd love to hear your feedback. You can find out more about Judith and visit her on her website at judithmorgan.com, and you can find Nicola at nicolacairncross.com.